I was an expert witness at Stephen O'Neill's inquest. In this case, the coroner, I was told, was a decent man, and the doctors who'd treated Stephen seemed to be decent people, so I was fairly hopeful that the inquest would return the obvious conclusion, which was that Stephen's treatment had killed him. A few weeks before he died, Stephen had been put on an SSRI antidepressant called sertraline. Zoloft is the other name for it, which is pretty commonly used. In his case, he was anxious, but the anxiety had probably been triggered by an antibiotic called doxycycline, which is also a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, although very few doctors know about this, and it too can cause you to become suicidal and anxious. In Stephen's case, he had a toxic reaction to the sertraline he was put on. These are fairly common. People can become agitated and suicidal even, but in Stephen's case, it was severe and immediate. He told his family. He told the pharmacist who had given him the drug, and she agreed with him that it was probably a problem that was caused by the drug he'd been put on. So she advised him to go along to the hospital. In the hospital, he told everyone he met, the staff and the doctors he saw in clinics, both when he got there and later over the next few weeks, that in his opinion the sertraline had caused this problem and it had made him suicidal. They didn't listen to him. They heard him because they recorded what he said in the medical record, but they didn't contradict him. But on the other hand, they didn't listen to what he said because they didn't base their actions based on what he said. In fact, they told his family later that he had to have been wrong because the drug was out of his system at this point, and how can a drug that's out of your system be causing a problem? Well, a drug that's out of your system can be causing a problem, but the doctors didn't know this. This wasn't just a problem with the sertraline that Stephen was put on. His doctors threw drugs at him, and he reported back to them the problems they were causing, and they didn't believe him. For instance, he had problems being able to sleep, and his doctors gave him a drug called quetiapine, Seroquel, which is often used to help people sleep. But the second commonest problem that this drug can cause, as reported to regulators of drugs like FDA, is that it can cause sleep problems. Stephen's doctors didn't know this, didn't heed him, and continued with the drug until he insisted, and they later changed him to a very similar drug to quetiapine called mirtazapine. Both Seroquel and mirtazapine can also cause people to commit suicide. Later on, his doctors gave Stephen a sertraline-like drug called buspirone, and on this, he ended up dead. This wasn't just a problem of Stephen reporting issues that the drugs were causing that were going wrong that the doctors didn't listen to. They didn't listen either when he told them what was helping him, because he reported this very, very clearly, but they were pre-programmed to continue doing what he was doing and not listen to or see him. And this is a problem we all have these days, which is that very good doctors are not listening to us and not looking to us. They don't know how to treat problems on drugs when things go wrong. When it comes to handling these issues, they've gone back to the Stone Ages. They haven't moved forward the way we think and the way they think they have. They're depending on a ghost-written literature that is the greatest concentration of fake news on earth. What does a decent doctor like Stephen's doctor, who is a very decent family doctor, do when faced with a family at an inquest when he's given the drug that has led to the problem? Well, in this case, to use a word that people use where I'd come from, he fibbed. He claimed that on the day that he gave Stephen at the sertraline, that Stephen was dramatically different to anything he'd been before. This is not what Stephen's family say. They say he was anxious, but just the way he'd been for the previous few weeks. Stephen was dramatically different that day, but after he had the drug, very soon after he had the drug, not before. The second thing the doctor said was that sertraline is well known to be a very good drug to treat people who are severely depressed. This is garbage that was created in Pfizer's marketing department. Anyone who's seen the data behind this drug knows it's one of the least effective drugs we have. What did the hospital doctors do at the inquest? Again, decent people. Well, just like the many decent soldiers in an army who can end up doing some pretty awful things, they claimed they were following orders. Whose orders? Well, in this case, they said the orders coming from the MHRA. That's the regulator for drugs in the UK, like the FDA is the regulator for drugs in the United States. And the other people whose orders they were actually following were the people who make the guidelines. In the case of the UK, it's people who make what are called the NICE guidelines. These guidelines are based on a ghostwritten fake literature. You couldn't design a better killing machine if you tried. The regulators who approve these drugs do not see the data behind them. The people who write the guidelines don't see the data behind them. What did the coroner, a decent man, do in this case? Well, I put it to him that the drug Stephen had been put on had killed him, but that another factor was that decent doctors, good doctors, treating Stephen in good faith were depending on a ghost-written fake literature, and this had contributed to the problem, and that if he, the coroner, wanted to raise this issue with the powers that be, I'd be very happy to help him. The coroner didn't grasp the nettle. Instead, he put Stephen's death down to the balance of his mind being disturbed without mentioning the drugs at all. The same thing will happen to you or anyone you know who is killed by some treatment you get put on, whether it's a heart attack or a stroke or whatever, because coroners don't have a box to tick when a drug has killed you, and they don't collect the data on the drugs that you or I might be on when we die. So there's no way for the system to change. The coroner didn't write to the honourable men and women who are behind the system we have, but I've written to them to try and raise the issues, to try and say, look, these things need to change. That the drugs we do are interred with our bones at the moment, in just the same way that Mark Antony said the good that Caesar did was interred with his bones. We need to help the honourable men who are behind the system that have killed Stephen O'Neill and are killing tens of thousands of other people every year to get to grips with the situation that we have. I will be making the correspondence with these honourable people available on this website and on my own website in the very near future. For anyone who's listening to this video who wants to take it and use it in your own country or your own situation to help the decent and honourable people who run the system wherever you live to get a grip with what's going on and to produce the kind of change we need. Thanks.